never actually shared this in public, but we'll talk a little bit about it. So I specifically had an experience with ayahuasca through a ceremony.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unleash Your Power. I am your host, Jeffrey Pinzon. Today, I have the great pleasure of sitting down with a great friend of mine, Armando Novelo, and he's going to be sharing a lot of great information about his life story, his business. So a little bit about Armando. He's been in the mortgage industry as a loan originator for the past 20 years and also has been recognized as the top 1% in the country as a loan originator. Not the top 10, not the top 5, the top 1%. He's a loving father, a loving husband, and I'm super excited to have him here to share his lifestyle. And let's dive right into it. Armando, my man, thank you for being here, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeffrey. I'm excited to hopefully we can give some value to your audience.
Yeah, man. I think we've been knowing each other for what? Quite a while. We met at the BNI chapter.
Yeah.
This was what, like 7-8 years ago? Probably.
Maybe like 2013,
yeah,
14.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
Been a while. So a little bit, can you share with us a little bit about yourself, Armando? Who are you? What was your upbringing like, so the audience could get to know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was raised. I came here. I was an immigrant. I was raised in the East LA area and had a pretty good lifestyle or childhood, I would say, up until, or I thought I did. Right? We always think we're okay. Up until about age 8 or 9, my parents kind of split up, and it caused a little bit of turbulence for us. And I think that shaped a lot of like what's happened in my life. Right? I think that was one of those defining moments that, you know, you can go one of two ways, and that was kind of where, I guess, to
Can you share a little bit about what happened at that time?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had, I guess, a quote-unquote normal family, right? Mom and dad. My brother's a lot younger than I am, for those people that who know my brother. But we went from being okay to all of a sudden dad was gone, right? And from living with him to we didn't see him again. So it was, as a kid, 9 years old, especially, I think kids usually gravitate to one parent. I always gravitated towards my father, right? Like he was it for me. So to be a kid who follows the dad forever and he's my idol, to all of a sudden lose him, like that's a big shock for a 9-year-old, right? At least it was for me.
Absolutely.
So that kind of shaped a lot of like I guess that was the seed that kind of began the process of my life journey, really.
Wow. So who was Armando in high school? Who was that young stud?
So I'll tell you, man, one thing that kind of happens is at least for me, when I lost my father, I became very angry. And I think it happens for some kids. In the culture that we live in now, mothers can go one of two ways, right? Mothers can teach their children to hate their absent fathers, or mothers can do what my mother did, and she kind of shielded him. So she had this idea that she didn't want us to think any less of our father. So she always kind of shielded who he was. But I think the damage that you could do, and it's not her fault, and I hope she doesn't think that we blame her for it, but what happens when you shield the father is it kind of amplifies a sense of insecurity within yourself, right? As a 9-year-old, well, if my dad is such a good guy, because my mom says he is.
Why is he not here?
Why is he not here? Why am I not good enough, right? And I think that was something that really stayed with me, and I was very angry for a long time. And to add to that, shortly after that, I had an uncle who, and I don't think I've ever told this story to anyone, but I'm going to share. I've told it to like my close friends. But I had an uncle who, I had a cousin who's a few years younger than I am. And one day, just, you know, kids are kids, we were messing around, and we made fun of the kid a little bit. And my uncle came to me with so much seriousness. And I remember the conversation, but it put a chip on my shoulder, like you can't imagine. But he said, my kids will always be better than you because they have a mother and a father. Right? To say that to like a 9-year-old kid who's struggling because his dad just left. And I remember like exactly where I was standing, how I felt when he said it. And I just remember thinking like forever, man, I'm going to prove to you that I'm better than you and better than your kids. And I had this huge chip on my shoulder, like all through my childhood, through high school, even through just recently, man. There's been some things that have helped me kind of pull out of that. But it was this huge chip on my shoulder that I needed to prove to the world that I'm better, that I'm good enough, right? And we do that the way society teaches us to, right? We buy the Rolex watches, the fancy cars. We want to show off all the things we have because that's the way that we've been taught to validate that we are good enough, you know? And for a long time, that was my struggle. I wanted to prove to my uncle that I'm better than all his kids, that I'm better than he ever was. But really, like, I've learned that that didn't really serve me, but I think it kind of did, right? Because it got me to go that way, right? Because I could have gone the other way. I grew up in East LA. I could have fallen right into the gangs. There was a lot of people that I hung out with that were involved with gangs. And I just decided, no, I'm going to really just be the most successful person because that's what I thought would win the game, if you will. Right?
In a positive way, you actually went all in your business. You wanted to better your life, but it impacted you. It stamped you, right? Somebody telling you, hey, my kids are going to be better than you. You'll never be better than my kids. Like, you'll remember that forever. So do you keep a relationship with that uncle?
He passed away. Okay. And I'm not angry at him or blame him one bit. I think I'm a father, and if someone who's a few years older than my kid was hurting one of my kids, I would probably want to retaliate.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And with his limited knowledge or whatever it was, that was his way of saying, hey, this is how I back up my kids.
Right.
So I don't take it personally anymore. For a long time, I certainly did, and I lived my life that way. But yeah, that's something that I've been able to grow past.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. That's a big breakthrough, man, because a lot of people don't break through that, but you've used it in a positive wave now and learn from it as well. So that's awesome. So let me ask you this. So what led you after high school? You went to UCLA, right?
I did.
Yeah. How was that experience being in college and being part of that?
So I was at a little bit of a disadvantage because I had to work. But I was lucky enough that I landed in the mortgage business while in college.
Oh, okay.
I got a job out in Westwood with a mortgage broker who taught me a lot. And I was able to work in Westwood and then go to school. But I was still commuting to West Covina. But it was really nice because I got into the business. I learned the business. I made a lot of contacts. And then ultimately, I obviously stayed here and didn't follow my career path.
And what led you to leave your career path and focus on mortgages?
Honestly, brother, for me back then, it was the money.
The money.
2003, 2004 in mortgages, we were making a lot of money.
Got it.
And it was greed. It was, I wanted to buy the fancy things and show that I arrived, right?
Wow. Okay, got it. So for the money got you in, and what kept you going, right, for the past 20 years?
The golden handcuffs, man.
The golden can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's like we're handcuffed to the cycle, right? Of I have to go sell another deal to keep it going, and we get used to the certain lifestyle that right now we're kind of retracting from a little bit, but you get used to that lifestyle, and it's hard to leave the business that allows you to continue the lifestyle.
Got it. It's like some type of standard that you already have that you're like, I can't get below that standard. Is it something like that? Or
yeah, certainly. And there's definitely other ways or other businesses where you can do it. But I think that you kind of learn a business, and if you're relatively successful, it's very difficult to jump out of it and do something different,
Yeah. And how did you lead to be recognized as the top 1% in your industry, in the country? Like, what led you to that, and what are some habits that you implemented that your people that are working in the same industry are not implementing? They're not being part of that 1%.
Yeah, I think for me, what really helped a lot is a company called The Core Training. They helped with coaching. I coached with them for a long time. But I think the biggest shift is I changed from being a salesperson to being someone who's an advisor. And I think that's what's lacking in our industry a lot is we're taught, you hear it, right? Hustle, grind, make more contacts, always be closing. And those are all great mindset tools. But I think that in the world that we live in today, people don't necessarily want to be sold anymore. They want to be either entertained or educated.
Right.
So if we can show people, hey, look, you can leverage your real estate this way and build long-term wealth, it's the same conversation, but a different message. Is I want to help you build wealth as opposed to I want you to do a deal so I can get paid.
Got it.
And I think when I shifted to being more of an advisor and the things that we do for our clients, that's when our business really amplified. And then obviously the help of the team really made it happen for us.
So you started going deeper instead of wider.
Correct.
Wow. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
That's interesting because longevity. That's gonna. So let me ask you this, right? Because in the past 20 years, what are some stories that you have, some success stories of your past clients that maybe you have helped them change their financial, getting into that financial freedom, changing that family legacy through real estate? What are some stories that you have for us?
Man, there's a ton. I tell you, one of my best clients, I won't say the name, but we met him maybe in 2004, and he bought his first 3-unit property in Bakersfield.
2004.
2004.
How much were the properties at that time in Bakersfield?
4 units back then. He paid like 80 grand for it.
Wow.
But check this out, man. Today, this guy has maybe 7 or 8 properties. Combined, they're probably worth about $10 million with just everything he's got. Really nice ones in San Pedro, like 4-plexes, 6-plexes. And literally the first one we did was a 3-unit, and we did an FHA 203K loan. That means it was so beat up, we couldn't even get financing for it. We needed to borrow money to fix it through the financing for him to buy it. And now the guy's worth, I don't know, at least maybe $10 million. It's really cool.
Wow. How did you meet that gentleman?
He was a referral from a real estate agent.
Got it.
And I mean, we've done just from him referring his friends, his family, his coworkers, and himself, probably about $30 million in volume from that one referral.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool.
The power of helping out, doing things right.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So one property now he has over 10 million. That's awesome. You have any other stories there?
I like the smaller stories, right? Like the couple. I have an example right now of a couple who bought a home using down payment assistance in 2015.
Okay.
They have about $500,000 in equity. So someone who came in with like $5,000 out of pocket to buy a house has lived there and now has $500,000 in equity. Like, that's really cool.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
So we definitely change people's lives. But there's stories of people who live in their home forever, then they sell it, go back to their country, and live there forever.
Yeah. Right now, that I know that there's a new program, down payment assistance programs. Like how our homeowners could benefit from it. What are the pros? What are the cons on that?
Yeah, it's a good program. It's an equity share through the state of California. So if essentially the state would partner with you. They lend you up to 20%, but then they own 20% of that equity. There's like some little caveats to that. It's not exact. I think it's a great program for someone who has not been able to save money for a down payment, and the payments are not affordable today just because rates are high and prices are high. So if we can bring their value down $100,000 or their loan down rather 20%, it makes a payment affordable, and it gives them an opportunity to buy in the future, or to buy now and have that equity in the future rather, right? But even if the state takes 20% of it, I'll take 80% of something great,
right,
as opposed to 100% of nothing.
Right.
You know.
And you get in that habit, right, of like now starting to buy properties and getting your feet.
Yeah, you get started.
You get started. Absolutely.
Yeah. Real estate's the number one creator of wealth in the country.
So for someone that has not bought a property, they're barely looking into getting a property. But it's because I hear sometimes zero down, their down payment assistance programs where now their closing costs, like realistically, like somebody that's a W-2 or maybe a 1099, give me 2 examples. Somebody that's 1099 or a W-2, what are the first steps for them to purchase their first house, FHA? Or do you recommend going residential, like single residence, or going the multifamily?
Yeah, I think if I could do it again with the knowledge that I have, I would use an FHA loan to buy a 4-unit property.
Got it.
Yeah, you live in one, you collect rents from the other 3. They only want you to, they only expect you to live there for a year, but obviously if you live there longer, that's great. But you could essentially buy 4 units with 3.5% down, live there for a year. In a year, you can go buy a new home with as little as 5% down. Now you have those 4 tenants paying your other home. Hopefully you have some cash flow there. But really cool thing about mortgages is that payment is fixed, but the rents can always go up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's a really good way to hedge against inflation. If you have a $3,000 payment and a $4,000 rent today, might be $5,000 in 5 years, or $10,000 in 30 years.
And your payment's still $3,000.
Correct.
Yeah, so you're making the difference. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's pretty insight information. So let's switch it up a bit. Like I know that you're a father, you're a husband. how has you mentioned your dad leaving you at an early age. How has that coped and shaped the way that you're a father with with your kids?
I I'm definitely more present than I think I would have, but I for a long time my priorities were backwards. My thought was, my father left us and we were broke, right? Like that's all I knew was like, I knew that when he left, we couldn't afford to buy food, right? I knew that when he left, we couldn't afford to buy clothes. So in my mind, I always equated being a good father with with providing,
Provider.
right? Which is true, but I think I overcompensated for that, where I bought them everything and I did all of that. And it's interesting because my kids obviously don't have the same hangups that I did. So when you buy them things, they're not as excited as I used to be.
Right.
Right. So,
And you're looking for that excitement, right? You're like,
right.
I'm gonna give you this.
Like I just bought you a
I feel
car. What's
you.
going on?
Yeah.
Like, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
So it's not the same. It's not the same hangups. But I think that some of the things that I've done recently, you know, I talked a little bit about, have really caused me to take a step back and focus on what's really important. You know, and it's no longer showing off to the world or proving that I'm a success, but really just the freedom of being with my family and teaching them things that I never knew, right? So that they don't make the same mistakes that I did. I think that's really what I've been trying to focus on in terms of being a better father as my kids get older, is really giving them valuable lessons that will allow them to live a better life.
God, how do you? I had Inky Johnson on our podcast a couple months ago, and a lot of the ways I love how he teaches his kids. He teaches them with code words and different stuff where they can remember like the lessons, and the blessings, whatever they're going through. What are some ways that that you're teaching your kids and you're delivering those messages to them, because they're young, right? How old are they?
They're 13 and 15.
Yeah. So it's a different conversation than speaking to an adult. Like, how have you implemented stuff to teach them lessons in the process, right?
Yeah, I try to talk to them as adults, even from the time they were very young.
Got it.
So we just talk to them as people. I think one of the things that we do is we dumb our kids down sometimes, where we like baby talk to them or use baby words. And I've never done that with my kids. I've always just had a normal conversation with them. And I think that's helped their vocabulary a lot. But one thing that's been really cool and fun for me is I play chess with them. And there's so many lessons in chess.
Instagram, yeah.
Right? If you think of all the lessons in chess, a bad move can be made into a lesson of paying attention to everything that's going around, not just the tunnel vision. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
Sometimes my little one will only play defense and he never attacks. So we tell him, if you're too cautious, you're gonna have longevity, but it's not gonna be success.
Right.
So we're able to teach them about taking risks. We're able to teach them about strategizing. We're able to teach them about focus. There's so many lessons in a game of chess, but also too, it helps me understand how they think.
Right.
And then I can play off whatever they're doing so that I can help them grow. Right. And I'll tell you, sometimes they catch my flaws.
Yeah.
Right. Last night, my little one got me in a game.
Nice.
And he checkmated me, and I didn't even see it coming while I was trying to teach him to look at the entire board.
He's found the blind spot.
So the lesson that I taught him, he taught me.
Wow, that's powerful.
That's a fun way to do it.
So how often do you guys play chess?
They play all the time because they're really practicing to get better. So they play on a chess app. I try to play with them at least 3 times a week.
Okay.
Just so that we just started this recently, but it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. I saw you guys did a puzzle as well, like a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah, we have one going now. We did a 1,000-piece puzzle as a family.
Those are fun, man. I do this with my kids, and I remember my dad used to do that with me. We'll get together in the weekend, and we'll start putting it together, building that piece by piece.
Yeah,
having that patience and enjoying the moment, enjoying those moments, because those are moments that you take with you. So definitely, and they're seeing that as well. So that's powerful.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Armando. Like, throughout your career, throughout your life, like, what are some stuff that have impacted you the most and shaped your life and shaped the person that you are today?
Yeah. Well, I gave the example of my father kind of leaving, and then that conversation with my uncle. One thing that kind of wrapped it all around for me was plant medicine, which we've talked about before.
Plant medicine. Got it. Can you touch a little bit on that? What is that?
Yeah. I've never actually shared this in public, but we'll talk a little bit about it. So, I specifically had an experience with ayahuasca through a ceremony. And ayahuasca is a root that comes from the jungles of South America, and it's a psychedelic, but there's a lot of healing properties to it. There's a lot of research that shows that psychedelics are helping people deal with PTSD, past traumas, abuse. So I was introduced to it through a mentor who I've known for a long time, and I saw a huge transformation. And
Is that what led you, like seeing his transformation? That's what sparked the interest, or?
100%, because
Yeah.
he lived kind of a similar story where huge ego, the Ferraris, and
Got
I
it.
never had a Ferrari, but like the fancy cars and all of that stuff. And then one day it was just like completely different. And listening to him and talking to him, I knew there was something that happened, right? When you see someone go from that to that. And I liked it, dude. It was just like, this is better than the old guy. And I was still the old guy, I still had the Rolex on and all that nonsense. Um, I said I was intrigued, but there's such a stigma, especially like in the religious communities, right? Because they see that as taboo. So even among my family, I had a lot of pushback when I shared my experience. But it was something for me that really brought me present to who I am or who I was, but not only who I am, but who I don't want to be. Right? Like sitting with plant medicine, at least for me, it was miserable, right? But it's miserable because you're forced to see the truth of who you are.
Mm.
You understand? And sometimes that sucks. But at least it was for me, it was an amazing experience because I know that, or I knew for the first time that I didn't want to be who I was. And that's what
Like
kind
you
of
were clear on that.
100%. There was no doubt in my mind, like, this is not working. And it started, you can't just like say, okay, I'm not that anymore. Right. But you start to notice, like, okay, I've done this. Things for me, because I've had the attachment issues with my father, I didn't make long-term relationships. And anyone that I got really close to that became a friend, I either pushed away or walked away from, or just kind of like, nope, I don't want to be too close.
So you were protecting yourself.
Yeah, like you just shielded yourself, right? It was always an ego. I lived in competition because in my mind it was always, I got to be better than you. I got to do more than you. And I think plant medicine for me was really what got me to see that there is no purpose to that. And you'll never be happy doing that. No matter how much money you make or how many cars you buy, like that's why we still see like wealthy people committing suicide, because money is not the ticket. Happiness is a ticket. But they say money can't buy happiness, and we've seen all those things. Yeah, right. But the reality is that it doesn't, dude. If you're unhappy, it doesn't matter how much money you have. You might be able to feel good because you go buy something, but that's not true happiness. Yeah. And I think that was very clear for me, and also just who I was being in my relationships. That was the biggest shift that I saw.
And how do you prepare for that? Like, what was the preparation? What did you? Is there a process that they put you through, or how does that work?
Yeah, so you prepare. There's a diet that you have to follow for 2 weeks before.
Oh, okay.
You obviously can't do any drugs or anything like that for a couple weeks. And the day of, I think it's 6 or 7 hours before the ceremony, where you don't eat any solids, and that's it, man. You just show up and embrace yourself.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful. Has anybody from your family done it ever since? You've tried it?
So I can only talk about my journey.
Yeah.
It's not my story to tell if anybody else has.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. I have a couple questions on that. Like, based on your revelations, right? The stuff that you learn in your journey, like, what are you implementing today that like part of your rituals now that you were not doing before? Like, you talked about the ego, the Rolex, like buying all this fancy stuff. Like, what are you doing now that is different that people can learn from?
So my biggest thing right now is focus and freedom, right? And we live our lives in I think this is one of the biggest things for me, is we live our lives in a state of autopilot. And what I mean by that is, if you picture like how you got here, you may not remember if you stopped at the light, if you turned, if you got on the freeway, but you got here, right? And the reason why you don't remember that is because we just fall into that autopilot.
Correct.
But sometimes we do that in everything else. And I found myself like sitting through an entire appointment with a client on autopilot,
So
right?
you know what to say, when to say it.
Correct. And we think that that's cool, but the reality is that if we're not focused, we can't be at our best.
Correct.
You know, so one of the things that, and this is Michael Singer, if you want to read a great book, The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer, and he talks about just whatever you're doing, be focused right there. Even if you're doing a mundane task like washing the dishes, just be super present when you're washing the dishes, and you'll see how your life changes. Like everything just falls into place because you're present. But when I've lived in autopilot before, it's chaos, right? Like you're just here and there and everything, and it's like you don't really know what's going on. Another thing that I do that kind of came through this is, before every phone call, I just think, what is the desired outcome? Sometimes you get on a phone call and it's like, man, what happened? Where did I go wrong? Well, it's just because I didn't have a plan for it. But if I set the intention before the phone call, I found that at 90% of the time, the phone calls go as I pictured them in my mind. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So being focused, I think, is the biggest thing, but also just being more present in my relationships, because I've burned a lot of bridges. You know, I was very eager to just say, oh, well, forget it. I just won't talk to them, and no big deal. I'll never see them again in my life, because that's how we lived, right? Like we just wouldn't see people anymore. That's how we grew up.
Yeah.
So it was normal for me to just break that. And being very present, there was a lot of times that, I mean, through my ayahuasca experience, I realized, like, man, that was not cool that I did that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was kind of a jerk there, you know? So I've actually called people and said, hey, man, I want to apologize to you because I did this and this and this. And this is how I felt. But in our society, dude, it's crazy, right? Like, we can't talk about how we feel because it's like taboo, right? Like, we're supposed to be strong. But I found that making those calls has been very healing for me. Some people are very receptive, and we may never be real friends again. And then there's some people that don't even want to have the conversation, and that's okay, right? That's part of their journey and what they're feeling. But that's kind of been my biggest adjustment, is just my relationships, who I am as a father and who I am as a husband, a completely different person. And it's crazy. They say when one person heals, you see everyone heal. But my youngest boy, who struggled a lot in school as a kid, like when he was younger, he had a full-time tutor that would come to our house every day and tutor him. And I started doing this work and just dealing with him differently. He no longer needs a tutor. He's got great grades. He's excelling in everything he does. You know what I'm saying? So it's really cool to just see that I worked on myself, and by default, it's like the ripple effects, right?
Yeah. That's powerful, because I don't know if you read the book, The Compound Effect.
Yeah.
And right there, one of Darren Hardy is sharing a story that his friend comes up to him and he's like, man, I'm having a bad relationship with my wife. Like, I can't stand her, blah, blah, blah. He's like, well, do this, man. Start writing in your journal all the things that you appreciate about her. So he starts doing it every single day, right? 30 days pass by and he has a conversation with Darren Hardy. And he's like, oh, Darren Hardy asks him, like, how's your relationship with your wife? He's like, oh, my God, it's incredible. She has changed completely. He changed the way that he looked at her. And because he changed the way that he looked at her and he was appreciating all that stuff, the ripple effect, she started changing by default and got in alignment. So that's powerful, man. And I got to say that it takes true courage to see when you mess up. And you, for the simple fact that, like, what I'm getting from ayahuasca is that it was kind of like an inventory check, right? Like you had to see all your good, the bad, but more importantly, the ugly side that was stopping you from moving forward, right? The ego, putting it aside, making those phone calls, apologizing to those people, like, that takes true courage. A lot of people, they'll rather, it is what it is, let's move forward. But you wanted to clear that space. So I think that's what I'm getting from ayahuasca. It's like, it helps you, it heals you on areas that you thought that you didn't even have broken, right?
100%.
Yeah.
It exposes you for sure.
That's huge. That's awesome. So real quick, because we have a couple more minutes. How are you using social media today, right, in your business, in the mortgage industry as a loan originator? What are you implementing now to stay on top of the trends? And in your business, your industry is constantly changing regulations. Like, how do you stay on top of it?
I just try to give value to people on social media. Like I mentioned to you, we grew up where we were okay financially, and then went to a place where we weren't okay financially. So my goal is any like idea that I have that can help someone save money, maybe spark it, a thought about compound interest or maybe investing in real estate. I just want to share ideas that even tax loopholes or ways to save money on taxes. I want to share ideas that will give people like financial wellness tips, right? And what I found is I've been doing this for about 6 months, but what I found is that I'm only giving information. I'm not asking for anything in return, but I get 2 or 3 people that reach out to me every week that say, "Hey, I want to buy a house. Hey, can we talk about getting a mortgage with you?" So I'm not asking for the business. I'm just giving as much value as I can, and I'm beginning now to get the results of that. Not really why I did it, but it's working out really nice for the business so far.
Nice. And are so you're utilizing videos, reels, stuff like that to add value to people in social media?
We
That's how you've
do,
been.
yeah. We try to do at least I do 3 posts a week
Got
on
it.
Reels, and then I try to stay on the stories consistent to be relevant.
Got it. Are you taking any coaching or anything to stay on top of the trends? Or
I listen to a lot of different like marketing guys that give me ideas, and I follow some smart guys. Alex Hermosi is a great guy to follow if you're
got it.
into marketing. So I try to follow people that are doing well, and you can start to see the trends or things they do, the psychology and how they write scripts, and I just try to follow the same things.
Got
But
it.
there's some good people out there that do coaching.
Any other people that you might recommend aside from Alex Hormozy, or any books on marketing and strategies?
Yeah, I forget the author's name, but he wrote a book called 1 Million Followers. I think it's Brendan, but I forget his name.
Okay.
Forward Academy is great if anyone's interested in that. Neil Dingra, he has a big event in Vegas called Forward. I don't know if I'm
Oh,
allowed to
yeah,
say
yeah,
that
yeah.
here.
Yes.
He's got a really good.
He had Gary
program.
Vee and a couple other people.
Correct.
Yeah.
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 So those are the guys that I kind of follow. Neil's helped me a lot. He's taught me a lot.
And he's in your industry, right?
He is in mortgage industry, correct?
Yeah, got it. That's awesome. That's awesome. Are you nationwide, Armando, or are you just in California right now?
Right now, I'm just in California, but as we start to grow, there's been a lot of we're getting followers that are in other states. I think we're gonna go ahead and get licensed so that we can start to serve a little bit more.
So what do you foresee for your business and as far as your team is something? What is your role? What do you foresee in the next 12 to 18 months?
I want to get better, not bigger. I want to have our systems airtight. We don't have to do 50, 60 loans a month. I think we just have to do 15 to 20 really well where the clients love us. I don't want to be in a place where anyone's working more than 40 hours a week. I want it to be very balanced for everyone on the team.
Is there a specific reason why you say you want to be better, not bigger?
Yeah, I want to be better, not bigger, because if you get too big too fast, you lose a lot of the important things that got you there. And we did that during the pandemic when it was crazy, right? We got really big, did a lot of business, but people weren't happy with us. We weren't giving great service. It was just, we're trying to close them because we couldn't keep up with the volume. Where right now, anyone who works with us is getting quality service. We're really giving them personalized attention. We're able to give them a true mortgage plan rather than here's an interest rate, have fun. So I think that's what sets us apart from some of these big companies is we're going to manage the mortgage forever, not just for the next 30 days, right? So getting better is just being better for the consumer, even if we have to do, or even if we have the capacity to do less business. I don't want to have a huge team anymore. I just want everyone on my team to be balanced and make good money and be able to spend quality time with their family.
I love that. Anyone that's considering getting into your field, right? What are some top 3 things that you recommend them to do right away?
Top 3 things is find a mentor, but don't just find a mentor who, looks pretty on Instagram. Find a mentor who really does it. Look at reviews, look at what they're doing, and then follow those footsteps, right? There's a fake it till you make it in our industry that is really big and really easy right now with social media.
So how can you find this? How can you separate them, right? How can they search for not the ones that are doing the fake it till you make it, the ones that are actually doing it?
Yeah,
Like,
you can look at people's production in most cases, but I'll tell you, most of the people that I know that are super successful are not super flashy, right? In our industry, at least,
mm-hmm.
right? You see, like some of these big producers, and you've had Angel on your podcast.
Yeah,
That guy's one of the most successful people in the area, but he's not driving around,
yeah,
in a yellow Ferrari or anything like that. So
yeah,
most of the time, the real successful people are the ones that are willing to share, that are willing to give you ideas, just like Angel does, right?
right,
And really will help you grow, as opposed to a lot of times people gravitate to those that have the fancy cars because they think I'm gonna have that. But all that is a rat race. Like most people that are doing that are just barely keeping on, right? That's why if you look at our industry today, how many people got rid of their Lambos and Ferraris in the last 6 months,
yeah.
right?
That's interesting. Yeah, in our business, right? Like it's funny. My business partner, when I first purchased my Tesla, he's like, no, not yet. Like he's like, get some money saved up, everything. He's like, it's not about the flashy stuff or any of that. He's like, other people, other CEOs will tell you go get that car because they want you to get in debt. Because guess what? Now you're in debt. Now you got to go out there and hustle more.
Correct.
Right? You got to go back to that rat race. You got to go back and hunt and everything. He's like, no, I want you to be good, man. I want you to be financial stable. Then when you're ready, that time will come. So it's like finding the right mentor, vetting the right mentor, because another is who are you listening to, right? Who are you listening to? Who are you taking that advice? Because one person will tell you, yeah, go get that car. Go get that car, go get in there because that's going to push you
To do more.
yeah, to do more. But some people, that's why understanding who you are is very critical because then you know what drives you. What's the driving mechanism? What's gonna push you? Is it gonna be the flashy stuff or is it gonna be making a difference? Right, leaving people better than what you found them in many ways. So that's huge. So that's okay. Find the right mentor. Right, do your due diligence. What else?
I would put together a very, and we teach this, I would put together a very big list of everyone you know. And then once you put that list together, I'd call them and figure out who of those people are my supporters and who are not.
Mm.
And then those supporters figure out how to leverage them to help you in the business, right? Not by trying to force them to buy something, but just ask them, when you hear of someone that wants to do this, will you refer them to me? Right? And you get to leverage that. I've given that assignment to a couple people that's worked out really well. And then the last thing I would say is mission before commission should always be the rule.
100%.
Right, because everybody comes into our business because they think it's easy money,
Yeah.
and a lot of people come into the business because it's easy money.
Yeah. Ah, that's huge. That's huge, and especially with the clients, right? Making sure that you're taking care of the clients, because sometimes they don't care. They don't care how much you know. They care how much you care for them, and and I think you, based on what you're sharing with us, is like that's what you're creating for your business, right? You're going deep instead of going wide. So you're going deep with the relationship. That's why the referrals keep coming. That's why the business now comes more effortlessly instead of you going out there and grinding every single time. Now you're reaping the rewards of planting those seeds, right?
Right.
And I think that example that you share, like making sure that if you're getting started in the industry, you're letting everybody know that you're in the industry. Don't be a secret agent, because if you're not sharing what you're doing, nobody's gonna know. You might have the referral right next to you or somebody that's planning on buying a house, but because you didn't open your mouth, they weren't able to share that with you. But always be exposing your business. I think that that's one thing that I've done in the alarms when I used to sell from the truck of my car, from solar now. Like I've always exposed my business because I want to make sure that people know what we're doing, and I take pride in what I do. So we make sure that we do good business as well. So any last words, Armando, for our listeners? Any last thoughts or anything that you want to share? How can they find you if they want to get in business with you, or if they're looking at buying a house? How can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, Instagram's the best way to find me. I'm at Armando_Novelo_. And I answer all my DMs myself.
For sure.
Still. Still.
Not for long now. Well, Armando, thank you so much for taking the time for coming out on our podcast. Make sure, guys, that you subscribe to our channel. Turn on the notification buttons. Share this with people that you know that they're going to get value from. Armando shared a lot of great insights today on our podcast. And tune in for the next one, guys. Take care.